I never intended to become this imperial consort. Honestly, in this deep palace, the most carefree positions are probably that of an answering lady or a changzai. You neither need to trouble yourself with currying favor with the emperor, nor deal with all the complex court etiquette. But fate played a joke on me, and before I knew it, I had somehow become an imperial consort. Ruined. Ah. You win again. Consort Shu slapped the table in frustration, causing the pile of mahjong tiles to clatter. Shu, keep it down. I quickly signaled to her with my eyes. The emperor ended court early today. We don't want anyone to overhear us. Don't worry. Consort delicately picked up a piece of pastry with her slender fingers. This side palace of yours is the furthest from the main hall. It would take at least the time of one incense stick burning for the emperor to get here. Besides, Chunhua is keeping watch. Chunhua is my most clever palace maid. She's excellent at keeping a lookout. Whenever anyone approaches, she always gives us advance notice. That's why I feel comfortable inviting my sisters over to set up our little joyful tea house. Come, no more talking, let's keep playing. I skillfully shuffled the tiles. While the sun's still shining, let's go for another round. Changzai had just learned how to play mahjong recently and was still in her excited phase. Your Highness, don't you think this game is a lot like life? Sometimes, you think you're just one tile away, but you're really far off. And sometimes, when things look bleak, you can actually win big. Oh my, our little Changzai is already gaining enlightenment, I teased her with a smile, though inwardly, I felt she had a point. Just like my position as imperial consort, which was completely unexpected. It was last autumn. Your Highness. Your Highness. Chunhua's voice suddenly cut through my thoughts, interrupting my recollection. The emperor is coming. What? My hand shook, and the tiles I had carefully collected scattered all over the place. Hurry. Consort Day was the first to react, swiftly tidying up the mess on the table. Consort Shu panicked and began pacing in circles, while Changzai fumbled around, trying to pick up the fallen tiles. I took a deep breath and forced myself to stay calm. Don't panic. Just do as we practiced. In the blink of an eye, the tea set was arranged, poetry books were in hand, and the earlier ruckus seemed as if it had never happened. When the emperor entered, what he saw was me and my sisters sitting upright, composed, and displaying an air of elegance. Greetings, Your Majesty, I rose gracefully, though inside, my heart was pounding. Could any of the tiles still be out in the open? The emperor nodded, his gaze sweeping across our faces. I heard that the imperial consort has been studying poetry and literature with the other consorts lately? Yes, I replied steadily. Since I've been fortunate to receive Your Majesty's favor, I felt it only right to lead my sisters in making progress together. The emperor smiled approvingly. I quietly let out a sigh of relief, seems like we had gotten away with it. But then, he changed his tone, however, why do I smell sunflower seeds? My heart skipped a beat, and I instinctively squeezed the sunflower seed shells hidden in my sleeve. Oh no, how am I going to explain this? The emperor has a sharp nose. I calmly stood up and walked over to the large redwood cabinet. A few days ago, I received a batch of sunflower seeds from the Jiangnan tribute. I heard they were marinated with special spices, so I invited my sisters to taste them. As I spoke, I took out a delicate cloisonné box from the cabinet. This was my specially prepared emergency tool, filled with various exquisite snacks and treats. So that's it. The emperor took 2 steps closer. I didn't know there were such novel things in the palace. Your Majesty, I had this crafted by a special artisan, I said with a wink. I heard that you've been troubled over the military funds for the border troops. I thought if we could develop snacks that are both delicious and refreshing, perhaps it could help ease Your Majesty's fatigue. As soon as I said this, the emperor's eyes lit up. I knew he had been vexed about this lately. Just yesterday, the Empress Dowager mentioned it to me. My imperial consort is indeed thoughtful. The emperor picked up a few sunflower seeds and asked, with this kind of spice marination, what's the cost? Not expensive, I quickly followed his lead. I think if we promote this method, it might even turn into an industry. The merchant caravans from the south to the north love carrying new things. Perhaps it could create a new source of income. The emperor nodded thoughtfully. I glanced over and saw Consort Shu and the others stifling their laughter. Of course, we were just trying to enjoy a game of mahjong, and I ended up talking about national economic policies. My beloved consort is truly meticulous. The emperor was clearly pleased. I will think about this matter carefully later. Today, I still need to visit the Empress Dowager, so I won't disturb you further. As soon as the emperor left, the rest of us collapsed onto the soft couch. Your Highness. Changzai looked at me in admiration. You're amazing. You just casually persuaded the emperor. Shush, shush. I playfully tossed a decorative pillow at her. That wasn't trickery, that was quick thinking and turning danger into opportunity. Speaking of which, Consort rested her chin on her hand. We still don't know how you became an imperial consort. Exactly. Consort Shu suddenly perked up. Every time we ask, you say you'll tell us another day. Today, you must spill the story. I sighed. Actually, it's rather embarrassing. It was last autumn, and I was just an ordinary Guerun, noble lady. At that time, the former emperor had just passed away, and the new emperor had ascended the throne. The atmosphere in the palace was heavy with grief. While other concubines were busy trying to curry favor with the new emperor, I spent my days idly staring into space in my small courtyard. As for why I became a Guerun, it's kind of a joke. My father was the Minister of Public Works, and I was his youngest daughter. By rights, with such a background, I should have only been a Changzai. But my father made a great contribution when building the Imperial Mausoleum, so the late emperor promoted my rank. It was a drizzling day. I was lost in thought under the veranda when suddenly, I saw a figure stumble into my courtyard. Oh my! Instinctively, I reached out to steady him, and my hand met a cold body. Are you all right, eunuch? And no, not an eunuch. The man raised his head, and a young face came into view. I was so frightened I almost lost my soul. It was the new emperor. Your Majesty. I was just about to shout when the man quickly covered my mouth. Shu, keep your voice down, he whispered, I don't want anyone to know I'm here. Now I was even more confused. Why would the emperor, of all people, hide in a small concubine's courtyard? Just then, hurried footsteps approached from outside. Your Majesty? Where is the emperor? It finally dawned on me. So, the new emperor was hiding. But then again, who would dare force the emperor to hide? Please help me, your ladyship, he looked at me pitifully. The Empress Dowager sent 2 female doctors to check my pulse, saying it's to ensure the imperial lineage. I almost burst out laughing. So, he was hiding from the Empress Dowager. Don't worry, your Majesty, I stifled my laughter and pointed to the warm alcove nearby. There's a large wardrobe over there. You can hide inside, and I'll handle it for you. Without a word, he slipped into the wardrobe, and I nonchalantly stood under the eaves, admiring the rain. Sure enough, moments later, 2 panting female doctors rushed over. Your ladyship, have you seen the emperor? The emperor? I feigned surprise. I was just wondering why it was so noisy outside on a rainy day. So, you're looking for His Majesty? Isn't he in the Imperial Garden enjoying the rain? The Imperial Garden? The 2 doctors exchanged a glance and hurriedly ran toward the garden. Once they were gone, I opened the wardrobe door. There he was, the emperor himself, curled up among the clothes, looking utterly disheveled. Your Majesty, you can come out now, I said, holding back a laugh. As he climbed out, he knocked over a sachet I had placed on top, and a rich fragrance filled the alcove. "What's this?" He curiously picked up the sachet. "It's a calming scent I made myself," I explained. "I smell it when I can't sleep at night." He sniffed it closely. "It smells wonderful. I haven't been sleeping well lately either. If your Majesty likes it, I can make another one for you." "No need for that." He tucked the sachet into his robe. "I'll just take this one." I couldn't help but smile. The new emperor still had a bit of childlike innocence. "By the way," he suddenly asked, "why did you help me just now?" I thought for a moment and decided to be honest. "Because the Empress Dowager worries about your Majesty too much. While her intentions are good, sometimes you need to make your own decisions. Besides." "Besides what?" he pressed. "Besides, your Majesty is already grown. You can't be forced to take tonics every day like a child, can you?" As soon as I said it, I regretted it. That sounded like I was calling the emperor a child. What if he got angry? But to my surprise, he burst into laughter. "Finally, someone who understands me. Of all the concubines in the palace, you're the most interesting." A week later, I was inexplicably promoted to the rank of noble consort. "Just like that?" the imperial concubine asked in disbelief. "Just like that." I shrugged. "I still think it was a whim." "And then what happened?" Lady Changzai pressed. "And then?" I smiled. The emperor eventually realized this noble consort of his isn't very attentive to his needs and spends all her time having fun with the other concubines. So the emperor. The virtuous consort trailed off. "So the emperor just let me be," I said with a yawn. "There are plenty of concubines in the palace. One less doesn't matter. Besides, I got the noble consort title for no particular reason. If I took it too seriously, it would seem forced." "Her ladyship is right," the virtuous consort nodded. "Those constantly vying for favor end up exhausted, and in the end, what do they gain?" All right, I cut her off. "Let's get back to our mahjong game. We haven't finished the last round yet." Yes, the pure consort immediately perked up. "This time, I'm definitely going to win." Watching them laugh and play, I felt a warmth in my heart. Perhaps this is the life I truly want. Have you heard? This year's selection process was particularly lively, Xu Fei mumbled through a mouthful of pastry. Yes, De Fei sighed. Just from Guangzhou alone, over 30 maidens were brought in. I was in the middle of peeling an apple for Changzai when I paused at the news. That many? Ever since I became a noble consort, the palace had been unusually peaceful. Everyone stayed in their own lane, no one fighting for favor. Our biggest daily delight was deciding what to eat and playing a few rounds of mahjong. But now, with so many newcomers arriving at once. "Your ladyship," Changzai whispered, "do you think someone will try to take your place?" "Take my place?" I chuckled. "What is there to take? And besides, if someone really wants it, they can have it." "Your ladyship," the group cried out in unison. All right, I handed the peeled apple to Changzai. "I'm just joking. But seriously, you all shouldn't worry so much. The palace is big enough, a few more people just means more liveliness." No sooner had I said this than Chunhua rushed in breathlessly. "Your ladyship. The selection is over, and the emperor kept 20 maidens. Among them, there's one called Lin Yuan who's already earned his favor and was immediately titled Lady of Attendant." "That fast?" De Fei frowned. "And?" Chunhua lowered her voice. "It's said that this Lady Lin is no ordinary woman. She excels at all the arts as music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. And she can even make pastries." "Pastries?" Xu Fei perked up. "Better than the ones from the Imperial kitchen?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Xu Fei, we're talking about palace intrigue, and all you care about is food? What's wrong with that?" Xu Fei said righteously, "We don't compete for favor anyway. And isn't it better to have a sister who can make delicious treats? I was about to respond when another commotion erupted outside. A young woman stumbled into the room, followed closely by a group of imposing palace maids. "Your ladyship, please save me." The young woman fell to her knees before me. I took a good look at her. She was exceptionally pretty, with clear eyes, quite a rare beauty. No doubt, this was the newly titled Lady Lin. "And who are you?" I asked the palace maids in a cold tone. Replying to noble consort, the leading maid bowed. "We serve consort Chun." "This Lady Lin stole consort Chun's jade bracelet." "I did not." Lady Lin quickly defended herself. "I just found the bracelet in the Imperial garden and was going to return it to the palace administration." I glanced at the bracelet she clutched tightly in her hand, then at the maids looming over her. It became clear to me what was going on. Ah, the old trick. Whenever a new girl enters the palace, someone always has to give her a hard time. But Consort Chun's method was so outdated. Couldn't she come up with something more original? Enough, I waved them off. "I'll hold on to this bracelet for now. You can tell Consort Chun that I took a liking to it. I'll personally apologize to her another day." The maids exchanged uncertain glances but ultimately retreated begrudgingly. "Thank you, noble consort," Lady Lin sighed in relief. "Stand up." I helped her to her feet. "From now on, be more cautious in the palace. It may look peaceful on the surface, but there are undercurrents everywhere." "Yes," she lowered her head, but what? "But I don't understand," she raised her eyes, clear and sincere. "Why can't people just get along?" Her words caught me off guard, and I was stunned for a moment. Looking into her eyes, oh dear, could this girl be one of those idealists? "Your name is Lin Yuan, right?" I asked with a smile. "Yes." "I hear you're good at making pastries?" Her eyes lit up. "I know a little. My mother used to run a pastry shop in Jiangnan." "Great." I clapped my hands. "Shu Fei, haven't you been craving good food? Let's have Lady Lin show off her skills today." Shu Fei jumped up excitedly. "Wonderful. I'll get the kitchen ready." And just like that, the previously tense atmosphere turned into a joyful gathering. Lady Lin's pastry skills were indeed impressive. Not only were her creations delicate, but they were also exceptionally delicious. Her pine flower cakes were especially delightful, earning praise even from the usually picky De Fei. "Sister Lin," Shu Fei said, her mouth full of food, "with your skills, you'll be quite popular in the palace." Indeed, I smiled as well. But remember, in this palace, sometimes it's more important to be kind to others than to always try to win. Lady Lin seemed to ponder this deeply, nodding thoughtfully. "Oh, by the way, I suddenly remembered, if you're interested, feel free to come by here anytime. We've been missing a pastry master for our tea parties." "Tea parties?" she asked curiously. "Yes, just gatherings where we study poetry and literature," I said with a wink. Chang Zai couldn't hold back her laughter, while Lady Lin looked utterly confused, not understanding what was so funny. "All right," I called everyone to sit back down. "Since we have a new friend today, let's teach Sister Lin a new skill." "A new skill?" she asked. I pulled out a set of mahjong tiles from my sleeve like a magic trick. "This." Seeing Lady Lin's astonished expression, I felt a warmth in my heart. In this palace, instead of scheming and plotting, it's far better to live peacefully. And with more sisters around, life becomes even more enjoyable. As for Consort Chun, I'll send her a couple of boxes of pastries made by Lady Lin. That should put an end to any trouble. After all, in this palace, sometimes a single pastry is worth more than 100 schemes. Something's wrong, something's wrong. Chunhua rushed in, flustered. "The emperor said he's coming to have dinner here tonight." I was in the middle of learning how to make osmanthus cake with Lin Yuan when I heard the news. My hand trembled, and flour spilled all over the floor. Tonight? I panicked, pacing in circles. Why so suddenly? Lately, the emperor had become unexpectedly diligent. He'd been visiting the harem almost every other day, making it impossible for anyone to relax. Don't worry, Your Majesty. Defei was always calm. We'll just tidy things up quickly. Yes, yes. Shufei quickly helped to clean up. Lin Mimi, you should put the dough away. But Lin Yuan suddenly suggested, why don't we make it for the emperor to try? We all exchanged glances. It wasn't that the idea was bad, but the emperor has been way too diligent lately, Changzai whispered. He's been coming to the harem so much, we barely have time to, study poetry and books. Exactly, Shufei sighed. It used to be so much better when the emperor was busy with court affairs and never bothered us. This is strange, though. Defei rested her chin in her hand, thinking. The emperor didn't used to care much about the harem. Why the sudden change? Could it be? I suddenly had a thought, the Empress Dowager is pressuring him again? Yes. Shufei clapped her hands. Didn't the Empress Dowager say last time, it's been 3 years since the emperor ascended the throne, and yet the harem has not produced a single heir? I face-bombed. This was trouble. So what do we do? Lin Yuan asked innocently. Should we just let him be? No way. We all said in unison. What a joke. After working so hard to manage the harem like this, if we let the emperor come every day, how could we survive? All right, I have an idea, I said, suddenly inspired. We'll take turns finding ways to handle him. I'll start today. That evening, as expected, the emperor arrived. What's going on here? He looked at the room filled with incense burners, clearly confused. Your Majesty, I weakly lay on the couch. I haven't been feeling well these past few days and am using incense to recuperate. Then I should. Her Majesty needs quiet rest. Chunhua said seriously. The Imperial physician said she shouldn't be disturbed for a few days. The emperor left reluctantly. I breathed a sigh of relief and gave Chunhua a thumbs up. The next day, it was Shufei's turn. Your Majesty, I've been in seclusion for fasting and prayer these last few days. On the third day, Defei. Today is my father's death anniversary. I am currently reciting scriptures in his memory. On the fourth day, it was Changzai's turn. Your Majesty, today is a day for avoiding certain people. And so it went, round after round. Surprisingly, the emperor believed all of it. We were secretly pleased with ourselves, until on the fifth day, the emperor arrived with the entire Imperial medical team. I feel that something's unusual in the harem lately, he said sternly. Today, the Imperial physicians must examine all of you. We were doomed. What now? At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly stepped forward. Your Majesty, this is all my fault. Oh. The emperor raised an eyebrow. Explain. Well. She took out a booklet from her sleeve. Recently, I've been studying the art of health preservation. I thought the ladies in the harem were overworked, so I recommended some remedies to help them recuperate. As she spoke, she opened the booklet, which was filled with detailed records of health regimens, what to do when, and what to avoid. Everything was meticulously documented. I see. The emperor took the booklet and flipped through it. I didn't know you were knowledgeable in this, Lin Dang. Yes, Your Majesty. Lin Yuan lowered her head. These are traditional remedies passed down in my family. That's quite impressive, the emperor mused. In that case, continue. I think this health regimen should be shared with the Empress Dowager as well. After the emperor left with the physicians, we finally breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Mimi. Shufei hugged her. You're amazing. Yes, I laughed, patting her head. Who would have thought you had this trick up your sleeve? Lin Yuan stuck out her tongue. Actually, I made all that up. I saw how everyone was trying so hard these past few days, so I just... You clever little rascal. I couldn't help but laugh. No wonder the Emperor says you're skilled in every art. Turns out you can spin a good story too. But, Defei said worriedly, how long will this trick last? Don't worry. I was confident. Since the Emperor said he would show it to the Empress Dowager, with her keeping an eye on things, he won't dare come to the harem as often. Brilliant, Your Majesty. Chunhua clapped her hands. Now we can finally get back to, studying poetry and books. We exchanged smiles. In the harem, sometimes it's not about having the most elaborate schemes but about knowing how to use the right leverage. All right, I clapped my hands. Now that we've survived this ordeal, should we play mahjong? Everyone said in unison. Watching them happily, I felt a warm sense of satisfaction. In this deep palace, sometimes being a little confused helps you live more clearly. As for the Emperor, let him keep thinking we're serious about health preservation. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is arriving. The warning came too suddenly, leaving us with no time to tidy up the mahjong tiles. We're done for. Xu Fei frantically tried to hide the tiles. Don't panic. I took a deep breath. It's too late, let's just leave it as it is. The Empress Dowager entered with a stern face, followed by a few maids. Her gaze swept over the mahjong table before landing on me. Well, she sneered, so this is your health regimen? We're doomed. This time, it's really over. I was about to explain, but to my surprise, the Empress Dowager suddenly asked, who's up for a round against me? Huh? We all froze, staring in disbelief. What? She took her seat at the head of the table. You think you're the only ones who know how to play mahjong? This turn of events wasn't what I expected at all. Let me assist the Empress Dowager with the game. I quickly took the seat opposite her. Defei and Xu Fei hurriedly joined as well. How do you usually play? The Empress Dowager picked up the dice. Well, I glanced at the other girls. We usually just self-draw with bonus tiles. A Kong gets an additional win. She deftly shuffled the tiles. An undisclosed Kong is worth 100, a disclosed 150. Winning starts at 200, a hand of all pairs is 300. We stared, dumbfounded. The rules were far more professional than ours. What are you waiting for? She had already set her tiles in neat rows. Let's begin. The round was intense, to say the least. None of us had expected the Empress Dowager to not only know how to play, but to be exceptionally good at it. I win, she announced triumphantly, laying down her tiles. A pure all-pair hand, self-drawn. Now tally up. Your Majesty's skills are truly exceptional. We all chimed in, praising her. But then, she let out a heavy sigh. It's been years since I've had such fun. Ever since the late Emperor passed, the court ministers have been constantly advising me, Empress Dowager, you should concern yourself with the Emperor and the welfare of the Empire. But who even considers? We fell silent, listening to her rare moment of vulnerability. Never mind, she waved her hand dismissively, you girls know how to enjoy yourselves. That's how the inner palace should be. Your Majesty. I ventured cautiously, you're not mad at us for deceiving you? What's there to be mad about? She smiled, health regimen? Do you think I don't know what you've been up to? And about the Emperor? I'll handle the Emperor, she declared confidently. Right now, he listens to me the most. You girls, just relax and stay here. We exchanged glances, surprised at her attitude. But the Empress Dowager's tone shifted. Uh-oh, there's a catch after all. From now on, make sure to invite me when you're playing mahjong, she said. It gets awfully lonely in this deep palace. We immediately burst into laughter. Your Majesty, you jest. This is your palace after all. Oh, by the way, she pulled out a packet of sunflower seeds from her sleeve. I heard you girls like to snack on these? I had the Imperial kitchen prepare a new flavor just for you. And so, not only did our joyful tea sessions continue, we even gained a new VIP member. With the Empress Dowager backing us, the Emperor indeed stopped visiting the palace as frequently. Life returned to its former leisurely pace. But every time we played mahjong, we had to be extra cautious. Whenever the Empress Dowager was present, we always had to let her win a few rounds. Losing a little money is no big deal, I would always tell the girls. What matters is keeping the Empress Dowager happy. Once, Lin Yuan asked me, "Your Majesty, won't it seem too obvious if we keep letting her win?" I patted her head. Silly girl, you think the Empress Dowager doesn't know we're letting her win? She's fully aware. In this palace, knowing is one thing, but speaking it aloud ruins the fun. I see. She pondered deeply. Seeing her sudden realization, I couldn't help but reflect, in this palace, the most precious thing isn't scheming, but this unspoken understanding we share. The days passed peacefully. Every morning, we deliberated over what to eat. Every afternoon, we pondered over how many rounds of mahjong to play, and every evening, we calculated who had won the most. Life was simple, yet satisfying. Who would have guessed that this calm wouldn't last much longer? That day, Lin Yuan and I were experimenting with new pastry flavors when Chunhua suddenly burst in, flustered. Your Highness! Something major has happened at court. What's going on? I asked absent-mindedly, still savoring the pastries. The northwest border is in crisis. The western regions have united their armies and are. Wait. Something struck me. Did you say the western regions? I put down the pastry, quickly walked to the inner chamber, and pulled a small box from under my dressing table. Inside was a letter delivered by a trade caravan last month. Your Highness, what is this? Lin Yuan leaned in curiously. It's from my uncle, I said as I unfolded the letter. He's been doing business in the western regions for years. Last month, he wrote that grain prices there had skyrocketed, and the common people were full of complaints. So that's why they. Consort began to understand. Exactly. I nodded. When people are desperate, they turn to drastic measures. Those small countries must be unable to survive, so they're taking a gamble. So what should we do now? Consort Shu asked worriedly. The court's already struggling with the military funds. I was about to speak when the Empress Dowager suddenly arrived. So, you're all here. Her face was somber. The court was in an uproar today. It turned out that the western regions had declared that if the Great Zhou provided them with annual grain aid, they would submit to our rule. However, the Great Zhou was facing its own grain shortages, and the ministers argued that the granaries were insufficient. Wait. I suddenly thought of something. Lin, didn't you say your family used to run a pastry shop in Jiangnan? Yes. She nodded. Rice there is the cheapest. Exactly. I clapped my hands. Jiangnan's rice. Empress Dowager, do you remember the suggestion I made to the Emperor about the sunflower seeds? The Empress Dowager's eyes lit up. You mean? Rice from Jiangnan is the cheapest, but it becomes expensive once transported to the capital. I explained, instead of having caravans come empty to the capital, why not have them bring rice? It's more cost-effective than having the court handle it directly. And what the western regions need most is grain. Lin Yuan added, if we can transport rice over there. Excellent idea. The Empress Dowager stood up. I'll go speak with the Emperor immediately. Wait. I stopped her. Empress Dowager, this matter needs to be approached carefully. Think about it, if you directly tell the Emperor it was a suggestion from the inner palace. I understand. The Empress Dowager smiled. Don't worry, I'll make sure the Emperor thinks of it himself. Sure enough, the next morning at court, the emperor proposed the plan. It was said that the ministers all praised him, calling him wise and enlightened. Do you think, one of the palace attendants wondered, resting her chin on her hand, the emperor really believes it was his own idea? Isn't that for the best? I laughed, placing another pastry on her plate. In this palace, sometimes not exposing the truth is the best way to handle things. But Your Highness, Lin Yuan voiced her concern, if things keep going like this, won't you lose your credit? Credit? I chuckled. Silly girl, in this palace, peace and happiness are what matter most. Look at the situation now. The Empress Dowager is happy, the Emperor is happy, the ministers are happy. As for us, we should just keep enjoying ourselves. Exactly. Consort Shu chimed in excitedly. Lin, come and try these new pastries you made. They're delicious. Watching them chatter excitedly about pastries warmed my heart. This palace doesn't always have to be a battlefield of life and death. Sometimes, stepping back gives you a wider view of the sky. As for matters at court, let them deal with the headaches. We'll just keep living our peaceful, happy lives. Your Highness, Chunhua walked over with a smile. Are we starting the mahjong game today? Wait, I looked out at the sky. The Empress Dowager should be arriving by the third quarter of the afternoon. Let's tidy up first. The sun was setting, and life in the palace remained leisurely. As for those grand affairs, there were always others to worry about them. We just needed to live in the moment. Have you heard? The emperor has taken in 2 more concubines, Chunhua said as she cleared away the tea set. Oh, I lazily reclined on the couch. Let him be. Over the past year, the dynamics of the Imperial Harem had already settled. While the emperor occasionally brought in new concubines, they never stirred much attention. It wasn't that us older concubines were particularly powerful, but... Come, come, little sisters, Shu Fei enthusiastically welcomed the 2 timid new arrivals. Try some of this pastry, it's made by Sister Lin. And have some of this tea too, De Fei poured tea for them. The weather's getting cooler, this tea will warm you up. Who would have thought that the once shy and nervous Lin Yuan had now become the leading expert on desserts in the harem? Not only had her pastries won the Empress Dowager's favor, but even the emperor frequently sent people to request them. Ladies. One of the young concubines timidly asked, we heard that the harem has been studying poetry lately? I nearly spat out my tea. That rumor had been going around for almost a year. Yes, Changzai said with mock seriousness, this is a proper retreat of cultural refinement. She winked at us. The 2 young concubines were left completely puzzled, not understanding why we were laughing. Just then, the Empress Dowager strolled in. What poetry are we studying today? Answering the Empress Dowager, I smiled. We were just about to introduce the 2 new sisters to the poetry in Dream of the Red Chamber. Oh. The Empress Dowager raised an eyebrow. I wonder what hand rich greens and fading reds makes in mahjong? We all burst into laughter. Over the past year, the Empress Dowager had grown increasingly lively. Sometimes, her playful remarks even surpassed us younger women. Come on, she waved grandly, let's give the new ones a proper introduction today. And so, the 2 young concubines could only watch in amazement as the dignified Empress Dowager and the high-ranking concubines sat down to play mahjong. Remember, whoever loses has to treat us, I reminded them. And Sister Lin's pastries don't come cheap. Day after day passed like this, with a unique sense of harmony prevailing in the harem. Though the emperor found it strange seeing the Empress Dowager so happy and the harem at peace, he allowed us to carry on as we pleased. There was one time, though, when he couldn't help but ask me, my love, don't you ever feel bored, spending all day in the harem? I smiled without answering. Bored? How could I be? There were so many interesting things to do. Experimenting with new pastry flavors. competing over the latest teaware. Listening to Lin Yuan's stories from Jiangnan. Playing mahjong with the Empress Dowager. Helping the new arrivals adjust to harem life. Occasionally offering advice on court matters. This way of life was far more enjoyable than vying for the emperor's favor or competing for power. Your Majesty, I poured him another cup of tea. The harem is peaceful, and the empire is stable. Isn't this the best life one could hope for? The emperor nodded thoughtfully. Many years later, when people asked how I managed to become a favored consort, I always smiled and said, I stumbled into it by chance. Since I became a consort by accident, I'll just continue living this way, without overthinking it. And yet, with this carefree attitude, you've stirred up quite the lively harem, said Lin Yuan, who by then had become Lady Shu. Indeed, I looked around at the room full of smiling sisters. In this harem, rather than scheming against each other, it's better to live joyfully. I lost, the Empress Dowager grumbled, slapping the table. Looks like I'll have to treat everyone again. Don't worry, Your Highness, I said with a smile, arranging my tiles. You've got plenty of chances to win in this round. Sunlight streamed through the lattice windows, casting warm beams on the faces of everyone in the room. This, I thought, must be the best life I could imagine.